Welcome back. This is the POLITY reaching you live from Abuja. Right now we'll be discussing or going straight into the issue at hand, and a number of things that have happened. And now I've been joined in the studio by Mr. Emmanuel Madaki Esquire. He's a legal practitioner and also an analyst. He's here to do some justice to the issues at hand. Good afternoon and welcome to the program.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
It's good to have you.
It's a pleasure.
All right. So across our national dailies, across everything that the news cycle, the major news now is on the issue of the River State tussle. The River State House Assembly was demolished yesterday, and they explained that it's for renovation and so on and so forth. But I'd like to get your thoughts. While all this was happening, the governor has presented the budget for 2024 to 5 persons, lawmakers. So I'd like to get your thoughts on what's your impression on this matter, and how do you think it's turning out?
Well, the incident or the issues happening in the River State, of course, you discover that they are so peculiar in nature that a lot of things are happening, to the extent that Nigerians across the globe actually finding it very difficult to actually know who is actually after River State, because the governor has shown some interest in ensuring that yes, the state gets back to its feet and begins to work very well, but then all these are distractions, that are taking development and actually concentration of the government away from the issues, the real issues that actually matter. Now, the budget for 2024 has been presented, and as far as the standing rules of the House of Assembly are concerned, of course, it was actually presented before the legitimate members. Remember, before the presentation of the budget, some had defected from their party to another party, and the issue is, there is actually a kundari, a kind of confusion in terms of analyzing the text and context of a member who has been elected on a different platform, and here we have the same member defecting to another platform. Of course, the law in respect of section 68 of the Constitution G has made it very explicit for the National Assembly, unless and until there is a kind of crisis or the factionalization of the party at that level that actually sponsored the candidate, no candidate has the right to defect. The only ground is when there is a crisis within the party. These are guys that were actually elected and sponsored under the platform of the PDP, and now it is not shown anywhere that PDP has been factionalized, whether we have PDP-1 or PDP-2, to warrant them defecting to another party. Oh,
so are you saying that's a valid reason to, or something allowed?
Yes. Once there is a faction,
okay.
Once there are issues within the party.
Well, won't some person say the faction is the governor's faction and
no, that cannot be the faction as contemplated by the law. It must be at the national level. The national leadership of the party or the DAS PDP must be factionalized first before you begin to think of defecting to another party, because at that point you would have been contemplating where your allegiance should be pitched to, whether to the main party or to the actually factionalized party. Now, these are some of the areas upon which you can begin to have a proper understanding to underscoring the fact that indeed, where those situations present themselves, one will be actually on the right footing to defect. Now, the River State issue is something that the federal government must look into the issues happening in River State, because River State is a microcosm of the larger country, and if anything happens to River State, it will have the direct signification and emphasis on the entire state, on the entire nation, and that will not be too good for our democracy. Indeed, we are actually having a fledgling democracy, but that does not warrant a situation whereby things will be done with impunity, and of course people will begin to wake up within at any point in time and begin to do things the way they want. We must, if order is the first law in heaven, then order must be the first law in doing everything as humans on earth. And looking at the budget of River State, of course, it has been presented. As far as the governor is concerned, those people who actually, he presented the budget before them, were actually the legitimate members. I remember the two factions, they now have two speakers based on the faction within the State Assembly. but the court has validated the faction that is loyal to the governor. Therefore, the faction that the court has validated is, of course, the faction that the governor went and presented the budget before. And, of course, that is a valid presentation.
All right. Well, it's still 5 persons, so one wonders, the legality of this. But you spoke about the law. We know for a fact, I believe, at the National Assembly, I think it is clearly spelled out that they shouldn't defect. But do you think it applies to states?
Well, the law is silent as to the state. Well, remember the doctrine of covering the field that happens to the National Assembly should, of course, immediately happen to the State Assembly. We operate the same constitution, despite the fact that the sectional provisions of the constitution are actually silent about it. But that notwithstanding, of course, that will have a direct bearing. And of course, I remember at some point in Plateau State, we had a similar situation when we had Dare and Apialong, the crisis within the PDA, within the State Assembly. And that was what happened when some defected. Of course, they automatically lost their seats. And that was when we had a different person who actually took over the mantle of leadership as the Speaker of the State Assembly. And of course, that has been a recurrent dismal in even other states. We've seen those instances. And I think at the national level, it was when we had some factions, when we had Dino Melaye, the Saraki issues and all of that. I think it happened some time ago. So it is not actually new to our democracy. But then we must be able to inculcate entrenched principles in our democracy, principles in our politics and politicking, so that we'll be able to have a same political milieu that people will be able to call it theirs.
Right, fair enough. The federal government has come out through the Minister of Information that they have no part in this, and whatever stance that the Minister of FCT might have is not something that the federal government have. So I'd like to get your thoughts as to how much influence do you think the federal government can have here? Is it an issue where we expect the federal government to stay out of such matters and not comment on what's going on, or do you expect the president to wade in here and
Yes, I think my own thoughts would be that the president should have a way of actually calling these people to order, because Nigeria is one. He is a president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and Rivers State is part of this country, where there is actually issues undermining our democracy in Rivers State. The governor can step up, the president can step in and make sure that indeed things are done within the ambit and contemplation of the law. It is not something beyond his power. He can do it. If others have done it in the past, I think he can do it. It is to save democracy and also to actually save the state as well from degenerating into a state of anarchy or lawlessness, because that will be an unpalatable experience for the state. That will be an unpalatable experience for the state. So it is better and neater if this persists to a large extent. Of course, he can come in. Remember the issues happening in Ondo State. The president had to come in. He called the deputy governor to the villa, and of course he spoke to him, and now we have a situation whereby the governor has been able to swiftly hand over power to the deputy to now serve as the acting governor, pending when he recuperates from his sickness. These are things that the president can do. Insofar as he has the interest of this nation at heart, it will not be a thing of joy for him to see that, yes, a part of this nation is in trouble, a part of this nation is in trouble, is having leadership issues. That will not be good for our democracy, and Nigeria would not be happy to see that a part of this nation is actually confronted with such unpalatable issues.
Right, that's fair enough. We'll see how that turns out. But on the Ondo issue, do you think it might have dragged a little too long, and with the way politicians react to perhaps losing power or even surrendering it momentarily, it seems as though this was the same person, former NBA president, who also shared his thoughts when President Yar'Adua was afflicted, and yes, so he had a very clear stance. So you would expect that this shouldn't have dragged this long, to the extent that the governor had to go to another state where he was now, residing sort of in exile or something of the nature. So is it a case where politicians are not eager to simply, follow the laid down principles, or There's something else untoward here.
You see, my brother, you know, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And it was Machiavelli that said, our politics must be founded on principles. And once principles are taken away from politics, it will be more directionalist than having a purpose in the affairs of governance. And what happened in Ondo State, it has dragged so long. The governor knew that he was sick. And that is why, despite the fact that he is a lawyer, a senior advocate of Nigeria, that is the highest rank in the legal profession, which ordinarily he should know better, that where that happens, he should voluntarily, without even questioning or without anybody calling him to order, because it is, I presume that he knows the law better than any other person. He didn't have to wait for the president to call him to order and say, please hand over power to this person. The essence of governance is to turn out skills, principles, and policies that will be directly beneficial to the people. He knew that he was incapacitated, and one of the grounds upon which somebody can even lose his position or vacate office as a governor is when the person is incapacitated. We saw it during Yaradua and all of that. But then politicians who actually have their own chicaneous way of doing things, you know, they would want to, you know, play their own gimmicks and politics just so that they could retain power for the time they feel yes, they can be able to do so, not minding the fact that yes, the people who are actually the greater voices actually brought them to power will be the people to suffer. So I felt Governor Akeredolu, it took him so long to relinquish power. He should know that constitutionally, that is why there is a provision that you cannot even stand as a governor alone. You must come along with a running mate. And the moment a running mate takes his oath of office and an oath of allegiance, he becomes the deputy governor. Why is he deputizing you? It is when there is a crisis or there is a lacuna, he comes in to fill in for you. It's not that he's taking power from you completely, but this is a transient period wherein power must depart from you to the second person in command, pending when you become hale and hearty to take over governance. But you know, these politicians oftentimes they have their own advisors who will come in because of their petty sentiments, you know, and begin to tell you that do this and do that, not because they are advising you in order for the advice to benefit humanity, but because they want you to be at the helm of affairs so that they will have opportunity to be penetrating and be actually committing their own affairs just the way they feel they want to do it. So I feel as a person, it took so long. Now the power has been shifted to the deputy governor to serve as acting governor of the state. We want to see that in the coming days, you know, the period that they must have lost when the governor was incapacitated, he will bring back the state to its sound footing.
That's fair enough. Hopefully, eventually, you know, I think he did abide to reason, and let's hope that it sets the president for others. But that being said, let's quickly move over to another issue making the rounds. There was widespread jubilation yesterday from the academic staff union of universities when the federal government finally agreed to what I believe has been part of their demands in each time they've gone on strikes at various occasions, that now federal government has removed varsities, universities and others from the IPPIS system, IPPIS, so to speak. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that. What, do you think this is a positive or a negative? Or
well, it's positive because before now, the lecturers in the academia were actually operating without the IPPS. Somebody came, brought an idea to the federal government that, look, enroll these people on the IPPS platform so that we'll be able to centralize their payment, and of course, direct deductions will be made for their taxes and all of that. But of course, you see, the teacher's profession or the teaching profession ordinarily should be one of the greatest or the most rewarded professions in the whole world. And that is why in some other climes we discovered that teachers earn higher than even medical doctors and even lawyers. And that's to tell you that the teaching profession has its foundational core values on the fact that yes, they impact humanity directly. So removing this, the lecturers from the IPPS platform, because of course there has been hues and cry all of the time from all these people, lecturers, that indeed this is actually making them quite uncomfortable. And since the federal government has not hearkened to their voices, I believe it should be a voice of reason, and in the coming days, we should be able to see improved service delivery from the side of the lecturers, because what they had asked for has been actually executed. I remember it was one of the reasons why they have been going on strike. You know, this IPPI saga and all of that. So I believe in the coming days, the lecturers should be able to prove the Nigerian public that indeed one of their requests has been granted, and they are willing to do justice to their profession.
Fair enough. You know, there is that fear or trepidation that vice chancellors might become too powerful, and but each situation has its positives and negatives. But like you said, something you said that is very key here, I believe, is that we expect better service delivery now that one of your key demands has been met.
Yes.
So we hope that is it. So I really want to go now into some of the, we still have pending issues in courts, electoral judgments that have not fully been realized in terms of contentions and governorship contentions. Yeah, mostly governorship, I believe, yes. So I'd like to get your thoughts, particularly with the whole Plateau issue and Nassau and Co, as to what we are seeing and how you think things are progressing.
Yes, I will start from my home state, that's the Plateau state, which of course is one of the states that is of most interest to me, just like other Nigerians too, that are watching with keen interest. The judgments of the tribunal were appealed against, and I remember Plateau was so special to the extent that, you know, we had two panels, the governorship and the National and State Assemblies, and then it so happened that at the tribunal level, you know, out of the 9 justices or judges who sat over the matters, you know, 6 of the judges agreed with the PDP, and all their judgments went in favor of the PDP, including the panel that handled the governorship election. And, you know, in the National and State Assembly, we had 2 panels, panels 1 and panel 2. So it was panel 2 that gave all our judgments in favor of the PDP, whereas panel 1 now gave our judgment against the PDP. Coming to the Court of Appeal, we were expecting a situation whereby, just like other states, or the treatment accorded to other states, that we will have various panels to actually test the veracity of those judgments at the tribunal. But then, unfortunately, despite the protestations by the people in Plateau State, that indeed we needed 2 or more 3 panels, just like the way other states were treated, Plateau State had 1 single dedicated panel. Of course, we do not know the brain behind it, or the inspiration behind the dedication of 1 panel to Plateau State. And the moment they started, you know, sacking the candidates of the PDP, they followed that trend until they saw to their mission up to the latter. And that notwithstanding, we are very hopeful, despite the fact that it was the same panel that presided over the matters in Plateau State, but that same panel kept contradicting itself to the extent that the first 2 judgments or 3 judgments, they ordered for a rerun, I think about 4 petitions or 4 appeals. They ordered that there should be a rerun on the same ground, as if all the petitioners in Plateau State sat and had a conference and said, this is why we should challenge the mandate of the people. Elections should be won at the polling units, not in the court. And if you're going to the court, you should go over events that happen contemporaneously with the conduct of election. Because all the issues that happen in Plateau State at the appellate level and even at the tribunal level, the cases were centrally pointing to the fact that all those issues were pre-election matters. And we challenged them. They said, we are not in court because PDP lost election in Plateau State. We are not in court because PDP did not validly nominate or sponsor our candidates. But we are in court because PDP violated the court order. And I'm telling you that that order of the Plateau State High Court was complied with. PDP complied with the order. The report of the compliance was tendered before the tribunal, and we even had cases at the appeal level, at the Federal High Court level, at the Court of Appeal level, that validated the report of the PDP. That PDP conducted a congress, and that congress was monitored by INEC. INEC came with the report and tendered the report. That is why at the tribunal level, 6 of the judges agreed that this report is valid. It has answered the questions of the petitioners, therefore they gave judgments in favor of the PDP. But going to the Court of Appeal, the Court of Appeal decided to look at the difference here. In fact, it was a clear case of giving birth to another child at the Court of Appeal, in the sense that the appeal presented by the appellants was panel beaten by the panel at the Court of Appeal and giving it a different outlook altogether as against the case that the petitioners brought. So and the law was saying
it should have the appeal court should have ruled based on what came from
exactly. Even if they were going to interrogate it, they should have interrogated it on a superior argument. But then, with due respect to the justices, though the matters have been decided, we can discuss it freely. Now, why I am saying this is because the cases are presented based on the pleadings, based on the facts, based on what the person is bringing to court.
What about the, I don't know the legal term here. In this case, what is the APC called?
They are meddlesome interlopers.
No, I mean like, they are the ones bringing the case.
They are the petitioners.
That's the word.
Petitioners.
So, can the petitioners amend or add?
No, in election petition, once the time within which to present the case has elapsed, you cannot amend your case. And it is not even the duty of the court to amend the case for a party. It is for the party to bring a request. I know my case is wrong. I am not bringing an application to amend it. But the Court of Appeal so much so amended their case for them. They were talking, if you look at it throughout their petition, they were questioning sponsorship, nomination, and all of that. And the question of sponsorship, nomination, exclusion, substitution, and everything are pre-election matters. You don't bring them to the tribunal. But then those people brought to the tribunal, and that is why the 6 judges say, look, you can't come here. Our jurisdiction is as defined under Section 285, subsections 1 and 2 of the 1999 Constitution that says we have to look at only events that happen on the day of election. The order that PDP kept, the APC kept parading and terrorizing people with was an order of the State High Court. And it is only that court that can enforce her judgment or a court of coordinate jurisdiction. The Election Petition Tribunal or the Court of Appeal sitting on election appeals does not have the power to enforce a judgment of a court, 1. 2, to begin to interpret judgments of court. 3, to also begin to say that you are in disobedience of court order. Because disobedience to court order is not one of the grounds within which or under which you can present a petition. And to add to this, recently one of the judges, or the justices rather, that sat on the appeal of Plateau State, with due respect to him, went for a function in Adamawa State, and he started discussing the judgment. That is quite incongruous with the code of conduct for judicial officers. It is an infraction on his oath of office as a judge, having sat over a matter, and to go about discussing that matter in the public. Besides, he does not owe anybody any explanation, whichever way he decides his matter. But for him now to begin to go to public functions, and then he now started analyzing those judgments and also trying to defend himself. It therefore is creating an opportunity or an opening for people to begin to question his discretion this time around, because he has now brought it to become a public issue for debate. He went there saying that all PDP people must be sacked. Based on the code of conduct for judicial officers, a judge is not even expected to be seen in some of these gatherings, but then it was a lawyer's gathering, fine. He has a right to go there. Having gone there, he does not have the power.
So judges can't ever speak on judgments.
On their own judgments. To begin to defend their own judgment, to say, I did right, I did wrong, judgments are appealed against.
Is it something that is frowned upon, but they can't do it? But
based on the code of conduct for judicial officers, he is not expected to be heard discussing his own judgments or trying to defend his own judgment, because he's subjecting himself to public ridicule and public ignominy, telling people that you cannot criticize me based on what I have done, and not that the lawyers can appeal against my judgment, and to even make matters worse. Some of those matters are still pending. For instance, the case of the Plateau Central is still pending in court. In fact, it was adopted just yesterday, and then he went over the weekend and started discussing this matter. Therefore, he is preempting those matters are sub judice. He is not preempting the mind of the court as to taking a neutral decision, or a decision that will be favorable to the PDP. Of course, The governorship appeal has now been lodged at the Supreme Court, and now he is now going about discussing this issue and saying, you know, all the PDP candidates must be sacked. And then, from what he said, it appears from his discussion that he did not even understand the cases of PDP in Plateau State when he was sitting over those matters. It therefore means that the judgments they gave in respect of Plateau State cases were judgments given based on misconceived facts. Because he was saying there was an order of the State High Court, PDP Plateau State appealed against the order to the Court of Appeal, they went to the Supreme Court and they abandoned the appeal. With due respect to him, or to his own analysis, PDP, nobody ever appealed against the judgment of Justice S.P. Gang that ordered for repeat Congress. There was no appeal. Instead, PDP went and complied with the order. There is no appeal. But now look at it, he said his own decision that he gave was based on the fact that PDP, having the order to conduct repeat Congresses, PDP in Plateau State appealed against the decision to Court of Appeal, PDP in Plateau State went to the Supreme Court with that order, and with due respect to him, sir, there was no such application, there was no such appeal to the Court of Appeal, there was no such appeal in respect of the repeat Congress. Nobody appealed against it. Instead, PDP organized a repeat Congress on the 25th September 2021, and that report was tendered to my lords, and my lords saw that report. But then they gave a decision based on the misconceived or misapprehensive or apprehended facts that indeed they went to Supreme Court, PDP went to Supreme Court and abandoned the appeal. There was no such facts before the court. There was no such presentation before the court. The only thing that PDP went to court and left at the Court of Appeal, at the Supreme Court, in fact, the Supreme Court dismissed that appeal in chambers, was the exclusion of local government candidates of PDP in Plateau State, that they were excluded by the State Electoral Commission. They appealed against that. The court declared jurisdiction when they went to Supreme Court, because at that time the election had been done. There was no need to pursue those appeals, because those appeals at that point were actually academic appeals, and they left them there. But then in respect of repeat Congress, those that order was complied with. PDP conducted a repeat Congress and INEC monitored, because INEC... And
is this what led to the candidates that we now see that finally went through the election?
From what he said, that was what they used to actually sack all the PDP candidates in Plateau State. He said it. The video is all over.
Does this perhaps mean that we kind of know what to expect?
Exactly. That was a perverse decision, actually. It was based on misconceived facts.
Okay, but I want to get something correctly. If you can refresh my memory, there have been rulings already in judgments, pardon me, in the Supreme Court about pre-election matters. Yes. Is that correct?
Very well.
That it is something that is, I don't know, I think there was a word, use of a phrase, something about meddlesome
interlopers, that you cannot leave your party and go and challenge the candidate of another party.
So, normally, if a judgment comes from the Supreme Court, is this something that should be binding on all
courts? And that is the principle of stare decisis.
So lower courts can never go against.
They can never. Even if they go against it, the Supreme Court will have opportunity of lambasting them. We have seen instances where justices of lower courts left the settled position of the law and started giving decisions on their own, and the Supreme Court had the opportunity of lambasting them, of calling them names. And that is the situation we have actually found ourselves. The Supreme Court has settled the situation that says disobedience to court order is not a ground upon which you can nullify an election. No. 2, that issues bordering on nomination, sponsorship, substitution, double nomination, you remember the case of Kashim Shettima. The Supreme Court said, look, you don't come to court and begin to tribunal and begin to waste our time with this. This is a pre-election matter. Go back, and that is why the Electoral Act 2022 has even expunged State High Court and left only Federal High Court. That when you have those issues, you go to the Federal High Court and ventilate your grievance. It is the Federal High Court that has the power to look at those issues. Some of us have confidence in the Supreme Court that these matters have gone there. The Supreme Court is going to do justice, because there is what we call judicial discipline. Judicial discipline is the sense that where the Supreme Court has decided, every knee must bow.
So, yes, I remember that. I've had a couple of lawyers here. There's a phrase one of them has left me with that. It echoes in my mind every other day. It says the Supreme Court is not final because it is infallible. It is infallible
because it is final. Yes.
So, but the question now is, when these things arise, personally, I'm confused. What is the way forward? Because if somebody says something is so straightforward, this is a higher court. If the higher court says this, the lower court cannot. Now it has happened. You know, where do we go from there? What is the remedy?
That is the miscarriage of justice and the brunt that the innocent Plateau State electorates will have to bear for some time, because the courts misconceived the facts, the court misapplied the law, the courts refused to follow the principle of judicial discipline, stare decisis, to applying the law to the facts and actually tapping from their superiors, the Supreme Court, which is final, just like what you have said. Like,
but now it's heading back to the Supreme Court.
It's going back to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court will have the opportunity of x-raying and of reviewing these judgments to the extent that the Supreme Court will now begin to tell us, between the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeal, which one is superior, who makes law for the other.
And if the Supreme Court agrees with what
if the Supreme Court agrees, fine. That means that's the law. But if the Supreme Court disagrees, we would have known the quantum of injustice that must have been done to these innocent people. But then it is not yet the rule, because where there is a wrong, there is always a remedy. And that remedy will be beneficial to the electorates.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Emmanuel. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. Hopefully we can come back and speak on this again when there are new updates. And you know, I in my own career as a journalist, I believe the profession I've interviewed the most is the legal profession. Well. So I'm always interested in seeing how things turn out, even if not just for the good of the people, but also for just our own knowledge and the expansion of the legal jurisprudence.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, that's how we round off the program for today. Don't forget, the POLITY reaches you live from Abuja every weekday, 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. I will be here with you once again tomorrow to once again delve into that fine intersection of politics, governance, and the state of the nation. See you tomorrow. Bye for now. I am Amadin Ogbewe.